Today we're going to rank every game mode in Brawl Stars' history from worst to best. This includes game modes that were so bad that Brawl Stars completely removed them from the game. Starting off with the F tier game modes, which are the most unplayable and least fun. And I think it's pretty fair to say that the worst game mode in Brawl Stars' history is Takedown. I think out of all the game modes in Brawl Stars' history, Takedown required the least amount of skill to play, okay? Whoever dealt the most damage to the boss would win, but you could kill enemies for their power cubes, which was good, but it did not take long for players to realize that if you took all the time to get a bunch of power cubes, you wouldn't have enough time to deal damage to the boss. Plus, if you did have a bunch of power cubes, everybody else basically ganged up on you so they could take them from you. So eventually everyone just started ignoring other players and went straight for the boss. And that meant that the super high DPS brawlers like Colt and Bull and Pam were pretty much the only good options. So the game mode didn't require skill, it wasn't fun, and it was just a DPS race. That's really what it was. If you got a good lucky spawn, then you would win. And if someone did kill you by chance, then there was a good chance that you would spawn way too far away from the boss, which meant that there was just a lot of time spent walking around the map. And I really love the concept for the game mode. I really do. But ultimately, it went down as arguably the worst game mode in Brawl Stars history. And the second worst has got to be Heist, version 1, not the version we're playing now. This is way back when the game was in beta, and every time you queued up for a game of Heist, you would either be on offense or defense. And it wasn't like Knockout, where it was the best 2 out of 3 and everyone got a chance to play both sides. No, the game just randomly assigned you to offense or defense, and there was only one round. So if your team made a comp for defense and you got into offense, you would just lose because your team comp sucked for it. Plus, the two sides were just so imbalanced, and sometimes defense was stronger and other times offense was stronger depending on the meta, and it was just ridiculous. Definitely an F tier game mode, and I'm so glad they improved it. Another F tier game mode, hold the trophy. Now, I actually did really enjoy this game mode when it first came out because it was really fun to try and find toxic different strategies, right? Pretty much like you have El Primo and Frank, they just dominated the game mode to the point where if you didn't have one of them, it was pointless to win. But before people discovered that, it was really fun. Plus, Gale with his Twister gadget was just ridiculously good. You could completely block off an enemy from getting to your teammate. Sprout was toxic to play as well. And after people kind of realized which the toxic brawlers were, then that's when, well, the game mode became toxic. It wasn't very fun. The spawn points were so spread out that it made a huge difference where you would respawn. So there was a lot of luck involved with that. And you could also just throw the trophy into places that certain brawlers couldn't even get right before they were defeated. So then the trophy would respawn into the center even after people try and defeated you. It was not a good game mode. We've got more game modes to rank, but first, thanks to Marvel Strike Force for sponsoring this video. Marvel Strike Force is a mobile squad RPG where you can unlock and battle heroes and villains from across the entire Marvel universe. Click the link below to download now. You can recruit up to 5 heroes or villains on your team and take them each into battle, including heroes from Marvel Studios' Thor, Love and Thunder. And for a limited time, new users will be able to unlock Thor, Hulk, and She-Hulk for free. Each character has an upgradable basic, special, and ultimate attacks, but the really cool thing is that characters can actually perform special combos that they can actually interact with, it's really awesome. The Age of Apocalypse is a huge event that is going on for the next year. Players will have an opportunity to unlock the extremely powerful supervillain Apocalypse through an entertaining storyline, but in order to unlock him, you have to first unlock his legendary 4 horsemen throughout the year. The first is Morgan Le Fay, who you'll be able to unlock during the Pestilence Scourge event, and the second is Rogue, who you'll be able to unlock during the Famine Scourge event. The other 2 horsemen of War and Death haven't been announced yet, but they're coming. So jump into Marvel Strike Force right now and use the link in the description to download it today. And once again, a huge thank you to Marvel Strike Force for sponsoring this video. Also in the F tier was Lone Star. Lone Star was essentially a 10-man free-for-all version of Bounty, but it wasn't about who was best at defeating brawlers like everyone thought it was going to be. Instead, it was more about who could steal the most kills, which was fun if you were the one stealing the kills, but it was super frustrating if you had your kill stolen. In my opinion, the real reason this game mode was so frustrating though was because of the spawn locations and the map size. There was no indicator for you to be able to find enemies, and if you got an unlucky spawn point, you could spend a lot of time just aimlessly wandering around the map hoping to run into somebody else to kill without any luck. Matches lasted until the time ran out, which means that you were stuck playing even if you knew you were going to lose, and it was just overall not that fun of a game mode. That's it for the F tier game modes. We're moving on to the C tier ones, which aren't the absolute worst. Kicking off the C tier is Hunters. Hunters was basically Supercell's second later attempt at Lone Star, and to be fair, they did improve quite a few things, okay? The match would end if any player player reached 6 kills, which meant much faster matches. They also added an icon to show you the direction of the #1 player, so you could usually find somebody to fight, at least a little bit easier. However, usually the #1 player was also the best, so everyone swarming them just meant that they would get kills faster, and then the match would end sooner, and yeah. Hunters also promoted kill stealing, which honestly, I don't think is a terrible game mechanic, but it's not the most fun, and I think the game mode would be better off if there was some sort of like a free point in the middle that spawned every 30 seconds, and if you went and you picked it up, then you would get a point, right? This would encourage more players to like move toward the center, and it would result in more fights, and but for now, Hunters stays in the C tier. We also have special weekend event game modes in here, starting off with Super City Rampage, C tier. I think this was the worst weekend event, okay? It was basically a second version of Boss Fight, which was the best out of them all, but with a time limit. So you had to figure out how to exploit it, and if you didn't, then it was impossible to beat later levels. As long as you did have the right team comp, the earlier levels were actually like super easy to beat as well. In fact, when it first came out, I was convinced that Supercell was actually going to add new monsters to this game mode, but they still haven't done that yet, which led to it being kind of stale and the least fun out of the special event weekend game modes. Next in the C tier, we have Payload. I think Payload was a really cool idea, and honestly, I hope that the developers take a second look at it and make some changes to improve it, because I feel like it has so much potential, but it just kind of felt clunky because of the actual cart that moved alongside of you. The way that it bumped brawlers was just, I don't know, it really threw me off or something, and like the hitbox around it was really strange, aiming around it was super hard, and like it would interrupt your supers if you were using your super while it hit you. It was just really strange, and it promoted this meta of either like really close range brawlers that are super tanky that just hide behind it that you can't do anything with, or throwers who were just attacking you on the other side of the cart, and it was just really weird. If Supercell improved the way that the cart works, I could see this being much better than a C tier game mode, but for now, the C tier is where it stays. Next in the C tier, we have Volleybrawl. Volleybrawl had a very particular meta, but it wasn't quite as exclusive as some of the game modes that I've mentioned so far. Even though there were certain brawlers that were way better than others in this game mode, Volleybrawl was actually pretty fun no matter which brawler you used. There was supposed to be some sort of a way to decide where the ball would land based off of the angle that it bounced off your brawler. I'm not convinced that it worked as intended, if that even was a feature. I don't know, I saw some theories about it on Reddit. There were some brawlers though that were like ridiculously good, like Gale. The fun wore out very quickly for Volleybrawl though, but I would like to see it return with some improvements because I was a big fan of it, even though I'm putting it in the C tier. Up next, we got the B tier game modes. And starting off in the B tier, we've got Present Plunder, also known as Trophy Thieves. Present Plunder or Trophy Thieves was basically Brawl Stars' version of Capture the Flag, and it started out as a seasonal game mode around Christmas time, which is why it was called Present Plunder. But players liked it so much that they renamed it to be Trophy Thieves, and now it's a special game mode that I'm sure will pop in and out of the game throughout all times of the year. There are certainly a few ways that Supercell could have made a different Capture the Flag game mode for Brawl Stars, but I think the Trophy Thieves is pretty good, okay? Being able to pass the trophy over walls to your teammates and get it back to your spawn like an assembly line, it was a really unique game mode, and I've honestly really enjoyed it every time that it's been out, but not so much that I wish it was a permanent game mode. Like it did run out. However, you know, it was pretty good all things considered. Up next in the B tier, we've got Robo Rumble. Robo Rumble has been in the game for a long time, and it's gone through 3 major changes, which it honestly kind of makes it really difficult to rank. When it first came out, there were 2 columns of bots that would spawn at the very top and make their way down to where you and your team would be guarding the safe. The match lasted as long as your team could defend the safe for, so this was before like different levels like Insane 1, Insane 2, up through into Insane 16. It was just the goal was to last as long as possible, and the longer you survived, the more overwhelming the bots would become. However, it didn't take very long for players to figure out how to exploit it. They could just like lure the bots by dashing around with mortars near the top of the map, while your teammates at the bottom next to the safe did nothing. Literally just spun around the safe, made sure they didn't go AFK the entire match. That's all they would do. And after that, they changed the map to how it looks a little bit now, so it's kind of like a showdown size map, so the bots would approach from all sides, not just from the top. However, the bots would still prioritize killing close brawlers rather than destroying the safe, and matches would still keep going for as long as possible, as long as you kept the safe alive. Players realized that there was a cap to how many bots would spawn, so if you didn't kill a single bot and just dashed around the map for 13 minutes and 14 seconds, which is when the match would actually just end and it would just give you a win. And so, I mean, it was also exploited. And then you have the current version of Robo Rumble where each of the matches is 2 minutes or less, and it's very difficult to get the highest rank possible. And the thing is with Robo Rumble is that it is some of the most fun that I have had playing Brawl Stars when they've made new versions, because you try and come up with different exploits, and it's been really a lot of fun. But it's also been some of the most bored that I've played in Brawl Stars since I've played it for so long. They've patched all the exploits, and it's not much of a challenge since then. And so, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you finish the quest for it, and then it's over, and even the quests are kind of boring. So since it's been some of the best and the worst, I've decided to put it in the B tier. Also in the B tier, we've got Big Game. Honestly, I would have placed Big Game lower on this list if it weren't for the fact that being the boss is so much fun, okay? But you only have a 1 in 6 chance of being the boss, and if you're not, this game mode can be a little boring. Not just boring, but honestly frustrating. And it's especially frustrating if the boss is either a Jessie or a Nita, because their spawns, they have so much HP. It's just annoying. But when you are the boss, it is very satisfying to take out tons of brawlers with like crazy stat boosts, and like you're just wiping people off the face of the earth. You're recharging your super like crazy. It's so much fun, and I really enjoy figuring out which types of brawlers are the best as the boss and which ones are the best against the boss. But overall, it's just a B tier game mode in my opinion. Up next in the B tier, we have Wipeout. Wipeout's basically the same game mode as Hunters, except for being a free-for-all, it's a 3v3, which honestly, it makes a huge difference. Kill steals aren't an issue because the points goes towards your team either way. There's also a ton of different strategies, and the meta for this game isn't very exclusive in comparison to like other competitive game modes. I've played matches where my team is down by a ton of points, almost like, you know, 6 or 7 points, and we still won because we really held it together and nobody died, which honestly, that's so fun. I love comeback moments like that in the game. However, I don't quite enjoy it as much as like Knockout or Bounty, which are other game modes that are specifically made off of just kills, which is why I feel like leaving in the B tier makes sense. Next in the B tier, we've got Bot Drop. Okay, I've got to admit, I did not think that Bot Drop was going to be as fun as it was, okay? There's way more strategy involved with Bot Drop than I thought there was going to be. Being able to lure the bots back to your spawn before your opponents do, while still keeping enough distance between the bots to where like they didn't actually attack you, it was actually pretty tough. It's a big game mode of like back and forth tug of war where like it's really difficult for your team to maintain total map control the whole time. And because of that swinginess, it did feel a little bit strange that sometimes the giant bot would spawn and make for some like undeserved wins in my opinion, but it did make for some really exciting gameplay, and I like the big boss. It's actually a pretty fun part to it. Honestly, I would like to rank this mode higher because of its complexity, but I think a lot of people didn't seem to like it for one reason or another because it wasn't played very often. Oh man, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I am putting Siege in the B tier. Many of you will know that Siege is one of my all-time favorite game modes in Brawl Stars. If I was going to rank this tier list strictly on how much I like to play each game mode, Siege would definitely be in the top 4, maybe top 3. But there's a reason why Supercell removed it from the permanent rotation of the game modes, okay? It was by far the least played permanent game mode, and players, they just didn't like how swingy the game mode was. I think that Siege has some of the most strategic depth out of all of the game modes, and unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily make it the most fun, even though I personally thought it was really fun. And so it's staying in the B tier. Another game mode that I'd like to rank higher is Showdown Plus, except that's not Showdown Plus, that's just regular Showdown. This is Showdown Plus. It has pluses for eyes. That's the difference. I'm just gonna tell you right now, Showdown is one of my favorite game modes, and in my opinion, Showdown Plus is another step above Showdown because you gained additional trophies for every kill you got. I had matches, I mean, seriously, I frequently walked away with 14 to 18 trophies in a single match. It was so good, but if you didn't get kills, then you wouldn't gain as many trophies, or you'd actually lose more trophies for a loss. Now, Showdown Plus also did promote stealing kills, but it wasn't as punishing as Lone Star or Hunters because one less enemy always meant more trophies for you in one way or another. There was less teaming in Showdown Plus, and fewer players would hide in the bushes, which meant that you're going to be fighting other players a lot more frequently. I thought it was awesome. Honestly, I thought it was just an upgraded version of Showdown. However, the meta was not as diverse as regular solo Showdown because only certain brawlers are actually really good at getting kills. And according to a tweet sent out by Frank, Showdown Plus was played significantly less than actual solo Showdown. In fact, it was played even less than many of the game modes in the C and the F tier. So, Even though I think it's an upgraded version of the game mode, I just can't justify putting it higher than the B tier. And finishing off the B tier, we've got Boss Fight. Interestingly enough, this is actually the second game mode to be named Boss Fight. When Big Game was first released, it was called Boss Fight, and then they changed it and then released Boss Fight, so which is kind of funny. Anyway, I think that Boss Fight is the best weekend events game mode in Brawl Stars. It's easy enough to beat the early levels to complete your quests, and it's actually very challenging to push past higher levels. In fact, I don't actually think it's even possible to beat Insane 16 right now for the average player, since I'm pretty sure Supercell has patched any exploits that used to work. There are some ways that incredibly skilled players are able to do it, and I think that's the perfect PvE game mode because you get that reward for being just insanely skilled at the game. But I can't rate the game mode any higher because I've played it so many times in the past that I've just kind of lost interest in playing it anymore. I've already gotten my highest rank, and that's it for me, right? Since it's great for new players and not fun for long-term players, I think that the top of the B tier is the perfect place for this game mode. And that means we're jumping into the A tier game modes. And kicking off the A tier is Basketball. Basketball was such a great game mode idea. I really love it. Even though it is the only 3v3 game mode that is played side by side instead of up to down, it doesn't seem to actually make much of a difference as I thought it would. It's really kind of interesting. However, it is kind of anxiety inducing when the ball bounces back and forth over and over and over on that moving hoop. Honestly, sometimes I wish that they kept that hoop just still so you could just shoot it. However, that might be a little bit too easy. I don't know. I love the whole concept of the 3-point line that you can score with like your super or like at the very edge of the shot. Like you could do it with your regular attack too. Honestly, I would love to see this become a permanent game mode. I think it's great as it is, although maybe some small tweaks would actually improve it a bit. Up next, we've got Heist. I've already mentioned how bad the old version of Heist was, and the current version of Heist is much, much better. A tier is a great place for Heist. Each team plays offense and defense, and the game mode is not nearly as luck-based as it used to be, but they kept the concept of destroying the enemy safe, which is what I think makes Heist so much fun. The meta isn't quite as diverse as some of the other game modes, but I really like that it gives certain brawlers who struggle in other game modes a chance to shine. Brawlers like Bull or Daryl that, you know, aren't great in other game modes all the time. Plus, Heist matches are generally faster than other game modes if you're really skilled and you got a good team comp put together, so it's really good for pushing trophies really fast. Next, we've got Hot Zone. Hot Zone started out as a seasonal game mode, but players liked it so much that it eventually became permanent and is one of the few competitive game modes as well. And honestly, I'm glad that Supercell made that change. A lot of different games have game modes where you just try and control certain areas, but you can still win just by controlling the same area longer than the opposing team. But the Hot Zone is really cool because you have to control all of the zones for the same amount of time or you'll never win. And that lines up great with like symmetrical maps. That makes for a really great fair game mode, although it is one of the harder ones to carry bad randoms in, which is kind of frustrating. Next in A tier, we got Bounty. Bounty is one of my favorites because it is all about skill and kills. A lot of people might not like how skilled matches have very few kills in it, but I love the tension that builds through an entire match. Watching Bounty matches and professional gameplay is like one of my favorite game modes. Like Brawl Ball is cool, you know, Gem Grab's cool, but Bounty, it is so tense the entire time because every single kill counts and could be the difference between winning and losing. And cheesy plays just don't happen as often as they do in some other game modes. It's sheer competitiveness is why I think it deserves a spot in the A tier. Slightly better than Bounty though is Knockout. Knockout could be the most intense game mode in the whole game. It's kind of like Bounty, except in some ways it's more competitive because if one thing goes wrong, it can turn the entire game around. And yes, you can make more cheesy plays, so it's less competitive than Bounty, but I love that it is possible for a single player to completely take out an enemy team if they play it right. It may be less like, you know, skill-based than Bounty. Well, I don't know. It's skill-based, but I think it's more fun to play than Bounty. And now it is time for the S tier game modes, the best of the best, the funnest of the funnest. Pretty sure funnest is not a word. Kicking off the S tier is the first ever game mode ever created in Brawl Stars history, Gem Grab. Gem Grab is all about constant map control, which makes it extremely competitive. I've always loved the countdown mechanic because it forces you not only to just like control a certain area and like get those gems, but then you have to keep them for a certain period of time, which is where all those crazy comebacks happen. Like Gem Grab matches are so fun when you go back and forth and the countdown restarts over and over and over again and eventually you win. It's just like some of the most intense memories I have of playing Brawl Stars are doing that, right? You can go from having 0 gems to stealing all all 10 of the enemy gems in a split second. And on the other hand, that can happen to you as well. It's really cool to see how much skill actually goes into gem grab and how sometimes, honestly, you can carry your teammates very well, even if they're playing not super great because of the way the game mode works. Also in the S tier, we got Duo Showdown. Aside from Solo Showdown, Duo Showdown is by far the best 10-man game mode in the game. It's the perfect game to play if you just like one of your friends is online and you want to go play with him. And it's actually really cool because it's different enough from Solo Showdown that a lot of players prefer to play Duo Showdown, even if they still just play with randoms because the strategy is so different. I think the respawn time for it is like pretty much perfect as it is. It's short enough that you can survive a death near the start of the match, but long enough that it's still possible to take out an enemy team within those 15 seconds. I also like that brawlers are invincible for the first few seconds after they respawn because that can lead to some pretty interesting plays. Overall, just an excellent game mode, a 10 out of 10. I don't know, that's not the right rating. It's an S tier game mode. And the third best game mode in the game is Duels. Duels is the only 1v1 game mode in the game, and it is so much fun. In fact, I'm shocked that Supercell has not made it permanent. It's so much fun. You don't have to depend on your teammates. You don't have to worry about other players teaming up against you. It strictly comes down to which player performs better and who has the better team comp. Almost every brawler is usable in this game mode because there's so many different kinds of maps that call for different strategies. And another really unique thing about Duels is that your super and your gadget numbers actually carry over between brawlers, which means that you can charge a super with one brawler that's easy to charge a super with, and then use your super on another brawler who has a difficult super to charge that actually has such a big impact on the game, right? It's really interesting and cool, and I think it should be permanent. I don't know about you guys, I love the game mode. And the second best game mode has got to be Brawl Ball. Brawl Ball is just such a great idea for game mode. Getting kills gives you a big advantage, but you also have to manage the ball, and that matters a lot too. Destroying walls has a big impact on your strategy as opposed to like other game modes where it doesn't matter so much, and the game plays very different depending on whether you're on offense or defense. And then you have overtime. Overtime is really intense as well. And now I have said this in the past, and I know some of you guys are surprised that I ranked this as the second best game mode, but Brawl Ball is not actually my favorite game mode to play. In fact, I try to avoid playing Brawl Ball if I can. I would much rather play Siege or Volleybrawl or Payload, even hold the trophy, than I would like to play Brawl Ball. But it is the most played 3v3 game mode in Brawl Stars, and it's not even close. So even though it's not number 2 on my personal list, I definitely think it deserves number 2 on this tier list. And that leaves Solo Showdown as the best game mode in Brawl Stars history. Now, I just want to be clear that I am not saying that Solo Showdown is the most competitive game mode. In fact, it's probably one of the least competitive game modes in the game because you can either win by like teaming with other players, which is straight up unfair. Don't do that. That's not cool. Don't do that. Or you can just hide in a bush the whole match, which I know some of you guys don't like that. I'm more fine with that strategy than I am with teaming, right? But you can play almost every single brawler in that game mode and still do well in Solo Showdown. And because of that, Solo Showdown has one of the most diverse metas in the game, since you'll face different brawlers pretty much every single match. There's also a lot of variation where the boxes spawn and like where you will spawn each match, and that keeps every single game fresh and exciting. Plus, whether you win or lose strictly depends on one person, yourself, unless you get teamed up. That's really stupid. Don't do that, people. Stop teaming. On top of all that, there are few things as satisfying in the game as picking up a ton of power cubes and absolutely slaughtering your enemies, right? It's no wonder that Showdown is played 2 to 8 times more often than almost every other game mode in the game, according to a tweet sent out by Frank. And if I'm being honest, it's probably the game mode that I play most as well, and it's certainly the one that does not get old for me, at least. So anyway, that is my tier list for every game mode in Brawl Stars history from worst to best. I decided not to include modifiers like Peekaboo or Mystery Mode or Graveyard Shift and a few others. However, there is a chance that I might have forgotten some, so let me know if I did. But let me know in the comment section if there's anything you disagree with. After all, I'd rather play Siege over Brawl Ball any day, so that's an unpopular opinion. Make sure you subscribe for more content. Check out my other channels, including my Free Fire channel right there, and there's another Brawl Stars video right here. I think you guys will really like this. This is a good one. For now, this is KairosTime ticking by. We will see you in Brawl Stars.